plan and how you're planning to ensure that everything is clean and disinfected and so forth. So I would advise everyone to get out on the health department website, pull the templates up that they have, follow the template, fill in your answers, get rid of what's there as a template. And then through their guidance, you have to then submit it. My understanding is by May 8th, it has to be submitted to the health department, at which time they have allocated a number, like a dozen of people from the health department going out to the businesses, checking to see if what's in their plan is really what's happening in their business. Then there's, I guess you could say, certifying them, putting a posting card that says this has been,
realize that we're all in a new situation. And I think when customers are, maybe just getting a little too close for comfort, I've been advising them to ask, again, like you were already referencing, ask them to, hey, would you mind, we've been encouraged to actually have this 6 feet, social distancing. I would really appreciate if you could respect that. I've also seen even small businesses kind of follow the lead of kind of some of the grocery stores and like the Costco's and the other places where they've put the lines on the floor and they've really put up different barriers. So the conversation is a little bit easier to have. So it's like, excuse me, sir, excuse me, ma'am, would you please, respect the barriers that we have in place? It's not only for your safety, but it's for the safety of our employees. And we really need to make sure that while you are comfortable with the situation, everyone here may not be. And awesome. That's kind of what I've, just encouraged people to do, along with everything else that probably the health departments are recommending. CDC, I know, is recommending is the PPE, so just the gloves and then the face covering, I think is what they're calling it now. They're trying to move away from the face masks because they are seeing that those are being consumed at such a large quantity that they just want you to have, our retail client just went to having everyone wear a buff. So I don't know if, people wear those skiing, they wear them fishing, they wear them whenever they're out, and it's just a cloth. It's not necessarily going to stop anything from coming in particularly, but it's going to stop you from touching your face. Awesome. And that's a big deterrent. So
I think along those lines too, something that we've heard a lot from employers is, we've kind of talked to them about transparency and making sure that their employees know what the plan is for the business. And so that if they are questioned by someone, if I walked into a store and said, tell me about what you're doing to keep me safe while I shop here or while I dine here, that your staff can answer those types of questions. What are you guys' thoughts on that? I mean, do you think that that's the way for employers to go, is to, be very transparent with their staff and to make sure that their staff knows the answers? Or what are your thoughts on that? Is it better for the, we do have some employers that never leave, like they're there 24 hours a day, it seems like, because they're very concerned about folks coming into their business as they reopen. What do you guys think about that? Tabatha, do you have any thoughts about the transparency and how best to maybe train your staff or educate them so that they can educate the public that comes into your establishments?
Yes, I have lots of thoughts on that. Twofold, if I may. One is on the responsibility of leaders and business owners to take that charge. We're entrusted to lead the flock, so to speak, right? And we have to be, and this can be even as a parent. I just was in an all-day conference on Saturday, all virtual and Zoom, so it was quite a lot. But I did it and it was so enthralling. But on leadership, as from the family to the work to the business, we have to be strong enough for others. And leadership is weighty. It's hard work. It's not for, she said, the faint of heart, but we have to make tough decisions and be that strong leader. So I think in being a strong leader, and Jason and I have been very transparent, and I think that you get more buy-in, ownership, support of your mission, vision, and values when you are transparent and leading and hoping to have everything be as good as you can, learn as much as you can, share as much as you can. And that includes training of the protocols of how to handle things for your staff, for how you're going to process. And that plan that you're supposed to submit by the 8th isn't just a pain in the rear to submit it and do all this work. It's to make you think through each step and each process that you need if you haven't thought of it. And it is to protect you, to protect your employees, and to protect your customers. So we've encouraged all of our clients, and we have to work with the clients and their employees and ours out in the community and at those businesses on the positive aspects of it. Is we care. We care about you. We care about our employees, and we just simply care about the community. We're going to follow the guidelines. We're going to wear the masks. We're going to clean before and after you come into our facility if people are able to come in. We care, so we flipped over fast enough to do e-documentation and online and virtual interviews, and from your pajamas on your couch if you want, you know, maybe wearing a dress shirt up top, but you know, so I think it's that being strong as a leader and caring to learn all that you can, to do all that you can, and transparency is a must.
Awesome, thank you. The next question's a little bit different, and it's kind of hard, and I'm not sure which person on the panel is the best to answer it, but we've been asked a lot about the employer's responsibilities. So are they able to take a temperature when somebody comes to work of their employers or their employees? Are they able, if somebody presents maybe that they're not feeling well, are they able to send that person home without them saying, you know, I'd like to take a sick day? Where does that responsibility line go? And I realize that none of you are legal experts, so I just want to clarify that ahead of this answer. But I want to know what you guys are hearing or what your thoughts are, or, you know, Kari, maybe you can speak to the question. But I do know we've had a lot of phone calls as in, you know, somebody says they're not feeling well, but they still want to be at work. They need the money. They promised me that they don't have any symptoms other than, you know, a headache or maybe a slight fever, or, you know, they're not coughing enough to be sent home. What's the employer responsible in light of all of the changes that we're going through right now?
Absolutely. I would say, I mean, number one, OSHA kind of tells us that, you know, the employer is responsible for providing a safe workplace. And that's kind of like just the basics of what kind of the guidelines. There are quite a few posters that OSHA has actually put together that are on their website that are specific to certain industries that I have actually found really helpful. And we can certainly, you know, put them out on your website or spread them out to people who are interested, because I think that they really provide some good nuggets of information. But I also think that, you know, with that in mind, you know, if you have an employee who says, well, I'm really not that sick, you know, with all things considered and where we are, that employee or that employer could actually consider the FFCRA, so that Family First Coronavirus Response Act, that could, depending on, you know, the circumstances of the situation, that you could pay that employee either up to full pay or 2/3 pay for 2 weeks while they're self-quarantining. And then there's also a tax credit for the business to offset the expenses of that employee's wages. So that is a viable option. The other thing is, you know, if anyone has any kind of pay time off that they could use, or sick pay, I don't know the possibility. I know a lot of small businesses can't afford plans like that, and I understand that. But I do know that some businesses have been paying their employees a little bit of something because maybe they've also gotten a PPP loan. So if someone is sick, they're saying, stay home and be sick. You were included in my numbers, so I'm going to continue to pay you even though you're at home. I want you to make sure that you're not sick, because your health and safety also is important to me, not alone, you know, plus everyone else. So I do think that it's important. And then ask them to go get tested if that's, you know, if that's a possibility. I have heard that a lot of people have been denied testing, and I know that that's kind of an added complication. But if, you know, if they meet certain parameters, or if they have a fever, I think that some of those things are important to take action on.
So something else that we've seen come up is where, maybe somebody within the staff is sick and they're not feeling well, and they've either been tested and they're waiting for the results, or they haven't been tested yet and they're just self-quarantined. And then we have folks that are on that same staff that say, I'm not coming to work then, because, I'm worried about the fact that that person was there and I don't want to be exposed, or I'm worried about, what if I've already been exposed and then I'm exposing even more people? Any thoughts about that, or input for like an employer, what they can do? So, I mean, that would basically wipe out your whole staff. It could, right? If
Yeah.
in my office, if I was sick and then Courtney said, well, I'm not coming to work because I was around Julie and Taylor, and we don't want to make everybody sick. So what recommendations do you have for that?
Yeah, and I think that kind of also goes to, I believe Tabatha and, a couple of people have mentioned that there needs to be a plan in place. I have actually started to create plans that we're going with the mindset that COVID is coming to work. There is going to be someone that's going to get sick. And so what are you going to do to prepare for that? How are you going to communicate with your customers, your clients? How are you going to communicate with your staff? And then what are the steps that you're going to take? So I think, and part of that is, in that situation, if you were sick, I would want to make sure that someone's coming in. Maybe you hire a separate cleaning staff or an outside cleaning staff. They need to come in and disinfect your office and the entire office, or the business, I would say, knowing that there's the potential that there could be a case, knowing how long this disease can live on certain surfaces and on certain fabrics and materials. And then I think it is, everyone has kind of talked about a lot of transparency. This is what's happened. This is who has gotten sick. And this is the plan that we are putting into place to make sure that our workplace has been cleaned, is now safe for you to come back to work. I definitely understand there's going to be people who may even be in that high risk category, whether they have, an asthma or an underlying medical issue. I'm not saying that they need to tell their employer that they have an underlying medical issue if that isn't already known. I'm just saying that it's a good idea for those types of people to stay home because they're at such a higher risk. And so it could be that they would be given other tasks. Maybe they can't work remotely, and that's not something that's understandable. And maybe it would be something where they would, take advantage of one of those other programs, whether it's the FFCRA or a PPP plan, or PPP loan, or the EIDL, or there's definitely other ways to compensate your staff, just to make sure that everyone is doing the right thing for the right reasons, I guess, is really, like, I understand people are like, oh, I don't have any money. And, but I feel like there's definitely a lot of different resources, as shown here on this, with all of us coming together. There are so many different, places where people can get, go and get help, food banks and things like that, I think are also, a little bit of an option to help employees get through this if don't have a steady income that they're used to.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. That does. That's excellent. Thank you so much. Along those lines, so I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing with workforce, because I do know that some folks are struggling. One, they're struggling to get people to come back to work, to come back off of the unemployment. I think that that's a big issue that some employees are facing. And then the second piece of that is they've lost some folks. Some folks have just said, this job really wasn't for me. I've decided I'm going to go a different direction. And so they're scrambling, trying to get people into their business, get them trained, which is another topic that we're going to come back to, because that's a big thing that we hear a lot about. But what are you guys seeing? So maybe if we can start with Kathy. Kathy, what are you seeing as far as like the workforce needs and what you're hearing, or what people are reaching out to you for help with? And how fast would you say employers are able to fill vacancies in today's market?
Well, I think in the last 6 weeks, we've seen, again, another pivot, and much of it's been stimulated by the unemployment enhancement, where people previously, or candidates, were working at lower wages, and suddenly they have this temporary fix, let's call it temporary fix. And that has definitely caused some. We've continued to place people, interview people. Employers have probably been more reticent to bring new employees into their environment because I think, are we there?
Yep, we have you.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, I have something on my end too. So, talking to a couple of employers that we had started individuals with, mostly temp to hire positions with long-term potential. And they started maybe 2 weeks prior or 1 week prior to the lockdown. Let's call it lockdown. Those people were kind of furloughed in a way. They'll come back. We have some coming back this next week, but their comments were interesting. One basically said, I want to work. A light industrial warehouse type of individual, great employee. I want to work, Then we have the other person who says, I'm just not sure they can do this and so forth. So we have recommended to our customers, our employers throughout the state, our partners and all kinds. We have just said, be again, transparent. Talk to that individual, take the time. They haven't been with you very long. And then of course we're giving the same message. I think we will have a lot of, food service people that may be using this time to investigate other opportunities, not living maybe so hand to mouth as they feel. Tips are great. They miss the tips. There's no doubt. So sometimes we feel like we're sort of, trying to get them back to work, mostly because we know that, again, their supplementation on their unemployment will be short-lived. But I think it has given people some time to reflect. I think your comment is great about saying, this is giving me time to really realize that I maybe need to try something different. So that's how our company nationally is sort of supporting candidate base out there. The workforce itself, we get a lot of responses to our postings. We get a lot of responses of people calling and inquiring, but there has been reticence, and we've actually seen it more on employers' edge of the limb, if you will, still trying to figure out how to comply.
Great, thank you. Sarah, what are you seeing? I mean, you're working more hand in hand with folks that are struggling and they're looking for work and they're more aggressive maybe about, taking whatever job comes open. What are you seeing when you're working with your clients?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of our clients have not received any of the unemployment, and we're kind of wondering what's going on with that. But they are the folks that are hoping to get back to work. That's
right.
A lot of what Kathy's saying is all I want to do is work. And so our new ones who are coming in who were laid off, they say, my job is here. Part of the requirement to receive tenant is everyone has to apply for unemployment. And so we do have the statistics that they're being denied. And that's all they want to do is they want to go back to their job. With that being said, it's like Kathy also just said, is paycheck to paycheck. They're all of a sudden really looking at that, and they're looking at budget, and we're talking about individuals who are getting minimum wage. And they're kind of like, if this happens again, or if there is a surge, or we're going to be shut down for a while again, what are we going to do? And how is this going to happen? And so they're really looking seriously as what it is to live on minimum wage, which brings, the greater question, how did this $600 a week come about, and so forth and so on. And so I think we're going to have to at some point address with our area employers that the $8.65 an hour is not making it for our people.
Right. Tabatha, what are you seeing with your employers and employees? An interesting thing that I had happen was I had an employer reach out that is using this particular time to retrain a lot of his staff, but he's also found that some of his staff just isn't a good fit for his team. And so now is for him the time to make those changes within his staffing levels. He said it's a really hard choice, but it's something that I probably should have done 12 months ago. And now faced with what I'm faced with, I'm paring down my staff to make a better cohesive team at the end of all of this. So What are your thoughts, or what are you hearing from your employers?
Oh, I'm so glad I got to answer this one, because I totally agree with Sarah and Kathy and those things going on. And in addition to that, or partnered with that, is the reassessment from the company level and the owner level. And we've done, I don't know if anybody has on this call or listening, but if you haven't as a business assessed your values and your mission, and if people are not on board with that, which includes not wanting to come back and off of the unemployment, not wanting to come back and be part of that team, speak to that mission and values and the work that we do, then you're right. We have clients making decisions on letting people go, even in this time. Additionally to that, we have the opportunity that all of our clients get to be picky and choosy, and people need to be grateful that they have a job or want a job. So they are able to raise their standards. If you don't want to work or you have a bad attitude, we're gonna replace you with somebody who wants to be here, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of unemployment, regardless of COVID. We want people to want to work with us. And then hopefully in the end, of course, that will create a better and cohesive team doing more good work, because they have and finally get down to not just lower income, but even upper income, everywhere in between, on finding that right fit culturally for your organization. And you as the leader get this time to reassess it.
Right. To rethink it.
Mm-hmm.
And look for someone else. The other question that pops up into my mind when we talk about this, and Kari, hopefully you can kind of address this. We're seeing employers that they're reaching out to their staff about coming back to work. Their staff is receiving the extra money, and then the employers are reaching out to us and they're like, we feel guilty about putting them back on our payroll, knowing that they're making more money on unemployment. And they almost feel like, as the employer, they're being set up to fail, because they're having to make tough choices of, I need you to come back to work. That means you're going to have to come off unemployment. I realize that you're making more on unemployment than you may working for me at this current time. What are your thoughts on that, Kari? And how do employers move forward positively, to address their employees' concerns? Because this is a big thing. I mean, I've heard this from almost every phone call that I have taken, where people are, one, it's a struggle for the employer. They feel bad for their employee. And two, there are some employers that their employees are like, hey, I'm making more money out here, I'm not coming back. And they're like, sorry, we need you. Either come back or I'm going to have to replace you. So kind of a double-edged question, but I was wondering your thoughts about it.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of those same questions as well. And it's a hard place to be, especially from the business owners and the employees who really do, they really want to do the right thing. They want to get back to work. But then on the flip side, it's like, wow, but I can be at home and do home projects, and I can do all these things and really be having more income. I really do think it comes a little down to a little bit of mental health for some people too. I know a lot of people, I'm probably one of those individuals. I need to work. I feel like I'm fulfilling a purpose if I'm at work. I don't know if other individuals feel that way, especially if they are really aligned with the values of that organization. They really do feel like they are contributing and they're making a difference. They're out there, they're doing what they do best. And I do think that, it's just a really hard place for people to be. I have had some people just really try and work with those individuals to get them to come back to work, I understand the other thing that we've tried, and I don't know, it's so hard to really know with unemployment. Some people have come back like a little bit, so they are still able to have a reduced hours unemployment claim. So it's a little bit of all the best worlds. Like, let's ease into this. We're phasing this reopening as a business. Let's phase in our employees and see how that works, see how this all works. They can still get partial unemployment, is my understanding. I don't know how that additional $600 comes into play. I don't know if they have to have, a UI on the state level and then that kicks in. I have been listening to the town hall meetings that have been taking place, I believe, on Tuesdays and Thursdays that the unemployment office has been putting out there. They've been really educational, and to the employers, and also educating the employees who are out there too. If you haven't, as an employer, if you haven't already signed up for Sides, that is like the online access to your unemployment claims, I would encourage you to do that. Not only does it expedite things for your employees, but it also allows you to change and update. So if you have someone who's out on unemployment, you are calling them back. They are critical to your business, your establishment, and they are refusing, regardless of negotiations and things like that. You can go on there and update that benefit claim and just inform unemployment that they are refusing work that you have for them. And yeah, it's.
So there's one thing I might ask Kari too. Great to see you, Kari.
Great to see you.
It's been a while. So we've had what I call is the domino effect. So you have those employees that are working. We have some large companies we deal with in the state. Some of them are taking a little more hard nose on the decline or the refusal. And because it will cost dollars to those companies as well. As we all know, unemployment is impacting from the revenue standpoint, and documentation and all that good stuff. So we have employees who call and say, this is my problem. My daycare is closed. I'm gonna they're getting paid to work remotely. So we're not kind of talking about refusing to come back and work. They're working remotely. But we're hearing a lot of, we've been surveying our employees weekly. We've been keeping in touch with them. We've been sending them resources. We've been doing everything we can because, as you know, our employees are out in the field, and Tabatha would agree with that. It's kind of hard to touch them all. And but it really is advantageous because you do hear a lot of what they're dealing with. So daycare, maybe they are also caring for an elderly individual and who's high risk, or has the care and whatever of family members that are really in that place. And obviously, again, they're refusing to come back, and they have some of the COVID transparency reasons. It's really hard to look them in the face and force them in. But we've been hearing also from our remote employees, isolation, feeling not connected to their team. I like to come to work every day and work with my team. So there's a connection, like you said, mentally, physically, socially. We start to miss some of that. Zoom is fabulous, but it's just not the same, especially when you're like me and you're a hugger and a toucher. So I get in trouble sometimes. But I think the big part of that is also there's a lot of these employees who are experiencing domino effects. Sarah can probably address that too with her clients. Suddenly they're home and they're getting more unemployment. And it's a temporary thing, but they have other services not available to them now for that reason. So that's just a thought that I had on the subject.
Sarah, anything that you'd like to add?
Well, I would just really like to say yes to Kathy with regard to childcare. Without childcare, and that is a huge barrier right now because we just can't have the physical distancing and everything with regard to childcare's being open. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I think they're still only open right now to essential employees. And so that leaves a lot of individuals without childcare, and without childcare, they are unable to work.
Yeah, and I know that I've heard a lot of places like the daycares that have, they've enforced being paid while they're closed to keep your child's spot, so we have employees that are struggling with that, where they've got to pay for their childcare spot, or when they do go back to work, they have to find another daycare, which we all know how traumatizing. I mean, as a parent, I know how hard it is to find a daycare that you trust and that you want to bring your child to. But once you've built that relationship, being faced with, possibly losing that would be devastating. It would be emotionally devastating on top of everything else that we have happening. So I do know that that's been a real concern too, as far as, you know, the employees that have reached out to us and said, this is what I'm facing. I'm going to lose my daycare if I go back to work. Or if I don't go back to work, I'm going to lose my daycare. And so they're making that hard choice of going back to perhaps maybe a job that they don't really want to go back to, or they don't feel safe going back to. And that's really alarming to hear. But the other topic that I wanted to bring up is we have been focusing a lot on employers, but what are you guys seeing as far as employees' needs in the workforce? What do you think is the biggest need that they need right now to go back to work and to be fulfilled in their job or their career path for workforce training development? What are you guys hearing from your employees that you're working with or that are looking for work? You know, is it soft skills? Is it how to interact? Is it, you know, perhaps maybe they need computer skills? Zoom is a whole new thing. You know, when I told my mother-in-law that this is how we're doing all of our meetings, she was like, we got her to do Zoom for Easter, and it was brutal. I'm not going to lie. I think I spent 6 hours on the phone getting it hooked up, but she said, I can't believe that this is what you do every day. And so what are you guys seeing with your workforce needs?
I would just say we in the pivot of change with our corporate company, we offered an awful lot of webinar training to folks that were off. All they had to do was go to our website and look at some of that. We're also doing a Strive to Thrive program for our employees. Every 2 weeks, we're doing some kind of update training. I think we're coming up on some technical skills as well. And part of it is communication. You just have to be able to do that right now. And we've had a lot of participants. We've even invited our employers throughout the state. We've done whatever. They're 30 minutes. So even if it's not your mother-in-law and it's a customer or an employee that is struggling with that, 30 minutes, they just about can endure, you know, or they have the time for. You know, I think right now is offer information. They want to know resources and they want some kind of reassurance. And I think that again goes back to Tabatha's point of leadership, your values, your mission. How important are those? Everybody's essential. Everybody's going through tough times and doing whatever. People are getting, you know, counseling with telehealth. People are getting, you know, their doctor. It's not the same, but at least you have someone to reassure you. Reassurance. Reassurance comes with education, with support, with community, and knowing there's, again, the resources have been really important. They've wanted to touch something other than what they're doing every day. So that's just my input. I don't know.
Tabatha, what are you seeing?
Can I share my screen just a quick second?
I think Cass can make that happen.
Can you see it?
Yes.
So to go along with all of that and what our people are needing, I think more now than ever, and I've come from corporate health and wellness, the feel good, the walking programs that be all the best that you can be. So I have worked for 20 years in the upper part of this hierarchy of needs: self-actualization, self-esteem, strength, you know, physical, nutrition, whatever. But right now we are all seeing a lot more in the physiological needs, the food, safety, shelter, security, employment. We're at the bottom for a lot of people. And so whether it's one-on-one or training online, or we're sending a newsletter, things like that to all of our employees or associates, partners, that we're checking on them on a lot more than, and helping make healthcare decisions and financial decisions, because there's more than just earning the money. It's also doing the most that we can with the money that we have and being smart with it. So we have helped weigh some options, pros and cons of how to handle something, whether it be financial, and to help them get their, especially in the lower income and minimum wage and higher, but in those lower levels that it is hard to make ends meet, but we can try to help with other decisions too, to make a little bit better those needs be met. And so training in those areas for other employers too can be very valuable right now, and show the employees that you care about their financial aspect. I know City Brew across the whole state gave $2 more an hour to their people. Other companies are choosing to plunge ahead if you can and help their people. But even in helping and training, like Kathy said, can include some of these other things for their family, for stress management, for financial. So you can expand your definition of training. And I think it points to this hierarchy of needs.
Right, so dig deeper into who the person is and what their needs are versus just what your needs are as an employer.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what I'm hearing your thoughts?
Yeah.
Kari, I think you had something maybe to add?
I did. Yeah. What I've seen a lot is definitely what Tabatha just touched on is I've seen a lot of employers reaching out individually to their employees and saying, where do you want to learn more? You know, is it an Excel class? Is it learning more about using Outlook? Is it these, because a lot of these computer skills, using Zoom for meetings, things like that has been an educational process in and of itself. But I also think that what I've also seen, especially I just got an email, I think last week, is the safety training. So the safety vest that goes around through the state is now they're going to bring all of that online. And I even think I saw at some point that maybe closer into the fall that they are going to be bringing those ABC clinics. So the assistance for business clinics online as well in conjunction with that safety meeting. So I've seen a lot of my clients take advantage of these, just kind of a lot of that free training that they've been finding, and a lot of these, just these opportunities for people to continue to stay home either with their kids or their families or loved ones that they're caring for, and be able to still stay a little bit on the payroll, knowing that they are furthering the organization as a whole.
Awesome. That's great information. Thank you, guys.
If I could jump in for real quick, the population that we serve is a lot of very low income individuals. And going back to the question is, what does an employee need in order for moving forward into the workplace and all? Things that probably cannot be given. And because all of this has been somewhat of a trauma for a lot of individuals, this experience, they want assurance, and that a lot of times just cannot be given. And so we're trying to give guidance with regard to when you're offered your job back or whatever, do the best you can, move forward with what it is, and know day to day it may change. Things have changed so quickly. The other piece with that is our individuals don't have computers. They don't have tablets. Most of them do have a smartphone, but they're also on a straight talk where they pay each month. And if they run out of their time, they run out of their time. And so they're stuck without the library being open. We are not open to the public yet. Other areas of resources where they could get the technology is not open. They're feeling left behind, or not being involved, or not able to get what they need to get. How do they get these things done? So I think at that level, when we bring it way down to this level of your basics, I think a lot of the basics are being overlooked simply because people don't have that tool to bring them to the Zoom meetings or whatnot.
That's excellent. That's excellent input. Another kind of spinning off of that question is, how do you manage employee expectations? So I'll give you an example. I'll give you two examples. So we have clients that have hired back their staff. They're not fully open, but they have taken a PPP loan. So they want to put them back on their employment role, and they're bringing their people back to work, but there's nothing to do. You know, so they're having them clean, they're having them reorganize, they're having them redo some things. How do you keep morale up? How do you keep feeling as a team? And then how do you pivot back to any sort of normalcy in the business throughout all of this? I mean, I had one employer say to me that her business is probably a third of what it was. And she said, you know, it's devastating to me, but I can't let that be devastating to my employees. So, you know, she's she's picked up most of the slack. She only brings them in during her busier times to prevent them seeing it, because she said it's such a really raw, sad feeling. And she's the owner of the business, so she's trying to shelter it, you know, to spare her staff from feeling that. What are your guys' thoughts about that, or your input for how employers deal with that? Because I think as we're ramping up, right, we have businesses that can't even open today. We have some businesses that have taken their PPP money. They are paying people. They're doing projects. But how do you know, work with your employees to keep morale up, make it feel cohesive? What are you guys' thoughts on that? Kathy, do you want to go first?
I think the things that we've experienced really vary. We've talked to employers that have brought folks back, again, put them in different roles. I think it was really exciting, sort of, for one of our employers, major employer in this area. They had to shut down a division of their business, and they took those people and had them disinfecting and doing, you know, whatever, keeping their jobs, keeping their benefits, doing whatever. I mean, they learned a lot too. Now, did they all jump at the opportunity? That's to be said. I don't know. Being able to pivot also, I think, has a lot to do with employers and leadership, and modeling. You know, there were plenty of things I've done the last 6 weeks I have been meaning to do for a long time. We have also been giving our time in the community and delivering things and doing other kinds of things that really represent the people business we're in. But it's also giving us a little better idea of when recovery comes around, what we need to do to be part of that project ongoing. Like I said, I think there's going to be a lot of our small businesses that have had to become agile and do some of those things that we've all talked about, who may not change. That may be part of their way to recover. And I think they have been talking to their employees and saying, hey, John, you know, thanks so much for taking that role of delivering. And by the way, wear a mask. That's just my input. Of delivering, you know, we didn't deliver before, but we can do it, you know, type of thing. May keep some of those things going, because they found out really, in that case, those employees enjoy to change. So I think it's communication, transparency, training, talking to your employees about how things are going to look different, being open with them, but it's also, it's leading by example. Awesome. You know, there's times I've really taken a long walk down the street and, you know, just gotten out of here where I can really think clearly about how I'm feeling. You can't deny the way you feel. It's a really scary time. Kari can probably verify this. There's going to be a lot of PTSD after this. And so I think getting your employees involved in doing stuff with your business, telling them how important they are and meaning it, you know, keeping the vital part of the business going.
Kari, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback onto that and say that, yeah, I mean, during this time, mental health is really, really important. I've seen some teams come together, and it's simple things. So they're, you know, they're starting to get back into the business. It's a little scary. They're playing music. They're, you know, they're opening the doors. The weather's getting nice. You know, they're just keeping each other positive. They're encouraging one another, you know, to just, hey, this is going to be great. We're going to get through this. We're all here together. I know you're scared. And I've heard these conversations happening, which is so encouraging. And I would just say to the business owner who is feeling like, you know, she doesn't know what to do and she doesn't want to show this vulnerable side to her staff, I would say maybe give them a peek. Maybe give them just a little bit, like she's human, but she's also she needs them. She needs their support. They need one another. And she's might find some strength in that. But if she doesn't feel comfortable, then I would encourage her to kind of maybe find some other business owners that she can kind of collaborate with, and or maybe in the same industry that, hey, let's just jump on a phone call, or hey, let's just jump on, you know, a quick Zoom meeting. Maybe there's 4 or 5 people. Maybe, you know, some people can kind of, I don't know if you guys can be the moderators for something like that, or introduce people in the same industry if they don't already know one another, but encourage them to talk to each other. Like, yeah, I know we're competitors, but we've never been in this situation before. So how do we support each other? I'm sure you're feeling the same thing I am. And how are you communicating to your staff? And I think I've found that there's a lot of positivity in that. I mean, we're human. So having these feelings is okay. And I think talking about it just brings you all together. Like, we don't know what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
What are your
it's
suggestions?
Yeah, being created every day and changed every day. I mean, nobody has all of the answers to anything.
Yeah.
It's really keeping your resources up, and Kari's a good one. And also really being honest with what you're doing. I mean, I think, we've been talking to employers, they're, if they're in manufacturing or essential services, and they're not taking any precaution, the 6 feet apart, all of that. I mean, we honor that in everything we do with anyone communicating with, and we will be doing that for a while. But, I think the same part goes is that everybody's human, trying to do this one day at a time. And a lot of people haven't ever given themselves the ability to do that. I mean, one day at a time.
I'd also like to say too, that when you do that and you're transparent, as we talked about earlier, as the employer being transparent, is with that two-way communication. For example, in our office, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks. I'm not the only one with a thought. Everyone in the office has different thoughts or similar type thoughts with a different spin. It is incredible what we've been able to come up with in our office just by communicating with one another, and not saying, oh, well, I'm the only one who can make that decision or whatever. So it goes back to transparency. Employers, look at your employees and say, hey, you guys, what do we need to do next? Let's have some brainstorming, some ideas. And it's incredible what happens.
Yes.
Yep.
And I'll just add just one other just kind of quick little comment or note, going back to a previous conversation we were having with the childcare and people having to stay home, whether it's daycare or it's school age kids. I have actually started to see, it's one of my good friends in Bozeman. She's started to offer kind of like schooling for her neighbor friends so they can go back to work. She's not working. She was a ski instructor. So she's able to reach out to people in her community and say, hey, I'll offer this. And she's keeping it small. It's not a large group because she's following the guidelines. She's doing what she can. She knows that all these kids are, for right now, healthy, but she's able to, I think she started doing it online, and now she's kind of starting to do like taking them all to the park, and at least offering, like, I want to say a few hours of the day so that some of those parents can go into work and do something. So again, it's pivoting. It's this innovation that people are getting creative, and maybe that's something. The other thing that Sarah mentioned was, I know in West Yellowstone, I believe the library is just keeping their internet on so people can pull into the parking lot and use the Wi-Fi as a community service. They're not necessarily allowing people to come in yet, but they can sit out there on their phone, be on the Wi-Fi, and not have to use their data plan. So maybe that's an option in your communities to start to bring this together, because we're connected with these things, and it's so important. And if we can't make a phone call because we ran out of data, or we can't see our parents or our loved ones who are not around, then that might just be another option.
Yeah.
And I think you all touched on something too, is the unknown. Like, we don't know what the next 4 to 6 to 8 weeks is going to look like. We don't know what October is going to look like. So I think it's being prepared for that as well, that it could go, they're predicting that it's going to go throughout the end of the year, and maybe at different levels as we work through the rest of the year. But I think that's something to keep in mind too. And another point that we have heard a lot about is hiring during this time. So your employer, you hire folks. How do you train them and still maintain social distancing, or provide, adequate training? I mean, I know for us, we just recently hired a new position, And I feel really bad in the fact that we're not together day to day. I can't just take her into my office and show her something on my computer or sit down with her across the desk and like work through a file. Everything's done via the telephone, texting, you know, social media, whatever, to try to get her up to speed with what we're doing. And I find that extremely hard. So what are your recommendations for employers as we work through this and they do bring on new staff to ensure that, one, you know, I know that when I start a new job, I want to do the best I can do, but if I don't know what I'm doing, it's really hard to do that. So what are your guys' recommendations when it comes to that? Or your thoughts or input? What do you guys think?
For us, that is probably twofold, because it's internal to us as a company, but also external to all of the clients. So some of it is on hand to each client, but we have increased probably our communication on with both sides, the associate or employee and the client. But reassessing your training plan, getting creative on how to do it. Some is happening over Zoom, webinars. We've had client interviews that, okay, we're going to Zoom them. Do you need my help? Do you already do it? You know, we want to be able to do that because they can't see face to face unless it is Zoom. Maybe their business is closed. And assessing what is included in that. I think sometimes too, not just training for the skills, but training for the culture and the fit and the we care, and including safety in that, of course, but reassessing what and how you're offering onboarding and training and finding new and creative ways to connect the new people in. We saw some jobs get on hold. We saw other jobs, you know, increase in need. Some of those jobs that were on hold were like, okay, now we're ready to continue. Let's do an interview too, because I sort of don't even remember interview one because they got, you know, hijacked in the middle. We had one gal ready to start the very next day when the shutdown happened. And it wasn't an easy fill with immunization records, drug screen, background. And so she is starting next week. But it's been a month of hold, which can happen. But I think every leader and owner has to reassess how and what they're offering for training and maybe add to it, and maybe add some of those other things like the safety, the stress management, how the morale and culture part of our company to draw in, especially if they're new, the right people to your culture and organization fit that you want.
Kathy, do you have anything to add to that? What are your thoughts? What are you seeing from your employers? And employees?
Very much the same thing. You know, we end up being sort of a third party in this relationship as far as hands-on. I think it depends a lot on the industry and how adaptive they can be to actually doing it. We have, you know, some of our essential services that we provide throughout the state. There hasn't been too much that has changed because the environment is already set up for the distancing, for the face covering aspect, because they're already wearing face coverings, you know, that type of thing. But we do see that the pressure is probably on the on-site managers to really communicate and include our people in all of that, because we're all under the same roof. You know, OSHA states that. You know, I think when we get to talking to employees that are new and want to get working and really do want to get working, we have to go into the retention mode and keep that candidate okay and fine to do whatever, because in this case, and I'm sure Tabatha would say the same, people were afraid. And there was some, we don't normally see that. We see people very excited to be engaged and be employed and move on and say they can adapt and do all of that. With the employer reticence a bit, and then with, again, the opportunity not to be able to train one-on-one. Even if you have your whole workforce working remotely, maybe for the first time and forever, you're still getting used to that. Right. You know, taking on a new employee that you've already done pre-employment on and everything else, and getting them there, you kind of feel like you're letting them down. And that's what I've heard from small business and large business. But they did, you know, we're starting to see some of that break. It, again, depends on the industry and what their specific requirement is.
Awesome. Sarah, Kari, would you guys add anything to that conversation? Kari, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the only thing I'd add to that is I've also seen companies mix up who's doing the training. So if it would normally be one person kind of onboarding someone and walking them through a certain process, or walking them through, you know, I'm the person who goes over all of the safety training and the paperwork and the handbook and those sorts of things, and then handing it off to someone else. You know, some people have done it, you know, remotely, and then some people are doing it in person since last week. So it's
Right.
a mix. It's a mix. And then they're also having it, I guess, the responsibility of that divvied up a little bit amongst other people, so that it's not just one person always doing all of the training or all of the onboarding. And I think that's it's an innovative way to actually you know, pivot right now.
And some of those people are saying they were glad to hear what they were glad to learn their piece of it. They never knew that's what it took to put somebody in their organization, you know, so that's another great learning lesson for that. We're all learning things, which is fabulous. But it is funny when you talk to HR teams and they say, gosh, I didn't know we did that. Well, now I do know. So, oh boy,
Right.
that really changes the kind of recommendations I'll make of people to work here, you know, so
Yeah.
I think it's a learning lesson too.
Yeah. One other thing I would add, if I just thought of this, because we are doing this internally. Jason just purchased the Billings Express Employment. So now we have View and Billings. So we have new employees there, and we have done a job buddy mentor, if you will. So the person that does my role out there with the clients, which of course is inside right now, but the person intended to be outside and working with the clients is my job buddy. And the person that does the employment specialist and interviewing and e-docs and all of those processes with Douglas is his buddy. And so if you are able to, within your organization, to do the onboarding and the training, and then shift it right over to a job buddy that has at least a similar or the same, depending on your size of a role, or a partner location, like we have Billings and Butte, similarly situated, that you can do that so they can learn a little bit more since things have shifted and changed, and maybe it's more Zoom training, maybe everybody's remote, that they have a buddy to go to for more. So that's a good idea. So it's working well for us too.
Sarah, do you have any thoughts on that? Or different, or the same, or what are your thoughts?
I think just about everything's been covered. I think a lot of it right now is we're thinking out of the box on how to do different things that we typically would not have had to do before. And so I think everyone has touched upon that, and I think that's great.
So let me ask you this question, and it's kind of twofold, but you hire someone and they come on during this really difficult time. How do you shift their mindset once things do ramp up? You know, I worry about that with employers. So they hire somebody and they come on during this really chaotic, everything's kind of up in the air. It's so uncertain, unknown. Maybe they're doing things that, you know, don't fit into what you're actually going to assign to them as a real job right now. How do you re-engage them post-COVID? How do you, you know, take what's happening right now and then shift it once we do come through this at the end of it as normal expectations in a workplace? I know that, like, for example, I worked with a retail store and she has people doing whatever it takes to just keep the doors open. And she said, I'm really concerned at the end of this, how I'm going to, you know, dial that back and take those responsibilities back. But right now I need their help. And so what are your recommendations for that shift of focus as we, you know, hopefully, you know, transition back to normalcy in businesses? What do you think the process for an employer is? You know, because you probably don't want to start the conversation with like, hey, I'm hiring you today and I expect you to do this, but that's really not in your job description. So, you know, 3 months from now, I won't have you doing the same things. So how would you say the best way for an employer to handle that situation would be going forward?
I'll kind of try to start this.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
I
and
think
it's tough because there's so much unknown. But I think the positive part about it is if you're able to keep your employees and have them doing different things and learning different aspects, I wouldn't necessarily say, okay, I'm going to take that away from you. I'm going to say, this is in your toolbox. look at now what other things that we have. So I'm not going to rely on just employee A for X and employee B for such and such. We've done all kinds of different things. And now our toolbox is getting more and more information in it. What a great thing we have as a value, as a team moving forward. And yeah, your priority might change over here, but boy, let's keep everything over here active on some level.
That's excellent. Kari, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. I was actually just thinking, you know, for your business owner, I always think, you know, as a fellow business owner, I take on too much. So if my employees are doing some of the things that I used to do, woohoo, like this is
Absolutely.
a great time. And that just means that I can then take on another project, or I can further myself. So I do think that it is a great time for cross-training these employees and having them, you know, I love all the suggestions of the buddy and, you know, the cross-training of the different tasks and different duties. And I think that the employees would probably also enjoy just mixing it up a little bit, having a little
Absolutely.
bit, you know, of a change and a difference in what they're doing day to day. But I guess kind of going back, you know, how do they shift? I mean, again, I think we've kind of talked about it a little bit, is maybe just wait until you're there, wait until you're ready to make the shift and see what it looks like. You know, is your team, has it really come together and you're working in just this new collaborative way? And why change it? You might not
Absolutely.
need to change anything. It might just be, okay, this is our new way to move forward. And again, it goes back to the pivot and the title. You know, your people are the people you have now, if they're with you, if they're being loyal, they want to help you succeed. So cultivate that, have that be your new culture, and say, all right, we triumphed, we made it through this crisis together. And it's because we thought out loud, we did all these great things together. And we may not need to switch back to how things were, because where we're going is better than where we were.
Absolutely.
That's excellent.
Yay, Kari.
I was just going to say quite a bit of that. I think the only thing I would add to that spot on is that it may need to shift to a new normal. I don't want to go back to how it was in the community, in my family, my kids as friends, all of those things. And at work here as a team, we are tighter now more than ever before. But then on the cross training for not just the owner, but each other. And Hershey just replied in the chat too, that employees may have more respect for one another as they know more about each other's roles in cross training. So I was going to say that as the owner too, and having that appreciation, but embracing that and moving forward with that they did, like Kari said, they wanted to help you succeed. Don't take responsibility in work too, adds purpose, and work provides purpose. So expanding that, you know, builds their comfort in you and their trust in you as a leader, that allowed them to do that and grow and learn more skills and cross train. So I wouldn't take any of that away. And your job as a leader is to grow your business. So maybe that does, like Kari said, expand your opportunities to explore other ways, other services, other entities and things that you can do so you can move your business forward and keep those skills with all the people that just learned more about it in cross training.
I think that's really good input. And I like the positive spin, you know, the fact that we do trust our employees, we value them. That's one way to show them that you value them, whether they're newly hired or whether they've been with the company 20 years. You know, more trust is always a good way to wrap in your employees and let them know how you feel about them. What are your guys' thoughts about moving forward with the workforce? And so you've got employees. One, this is kind of a random question, but what do you allow them to do once we do get back to what we consider the new normal? I mean, will you allow travel? Will you allow them to work from home still? will you require them to be in the office 8 to 5 like normal, or regular store, you know, like if you can work from home? What are you guys hearing from employers on that side of the fence? And then the other thing that kind of spins into that is, what do you think the future for workforce looks like in the state? You know, prior to COVID, we were hearing so much about, you know, there wasn't a lot of workforce. It was very tight market. It was, you know, extremely tough to get good people that wanted to stay with one position because they were looking for other opportunities. What are your thoughts on all of this as we move forward? And Kathy, I'm going to start with you.
I think you do that because I'm the senior team member in this Zoom. Is that right?
No, it's because you're so pretty and I love your top, and you're the first bubble on my screen. So there you go.
Okay. Well, I've got my jammies on down below, so I'm in the office too. You know, I think that first, everybody on this call are, you know, just have tremendous talent and drive to do the right thing. And I think most employers will do the right thing. You know, I lived through the staffing industry in 2008, 2009, 2010, and we came back big because employers were still reticent. Our financial world market was in a horrible place. And remaining positive. I mean, Kari's always so positive with a ton of knowledge. You know, you can do the touchy-feely, you know, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to leadership and owning a business, you have to make the decisions that will help you recover and help you do it in grand style. And it won't look the same this time. But as far as our market goes, I think we're still going to have some challenges for candidates fighting the CARES Act and not fighting it, but, you know, having candidates be excited to get on with things. I'm kind of a carry-on gal, as you know, Julie. And I think sometimes just doing the right thing for yourself, for your career. Can't be out of work too long. You know, things will look fabulous here next year this time. And having big gaps on your, you know, even for a pandemic, you know, I was laughing to myself last night. I have a granddaughter who is a month old who was born in Seattle during the pandemic. They're not stopping for anything. You know,
Right.
they're sheltering, they're going on. She happens to be a teacher. She has had maternity leave. She's been at home and she's been rethinking only moving forward. So doing the right thing to protect yourself, doing the right thing to apply for jobs, keep working. I mean, I always say that, keep working, because it connects you to your community, to yourself, keeps your skills. This will pass. And not everybody's going to be able to say, I was out of work 2 years because of COVID. Right. And, you know, in my history, I've seen people come to me after the ACM had shut down 20 years before, and they were waiting for it to open again to go back to work.
Right.
Sarah has heard me say this a million times. So I would say at this point, I think we're still going to have challenges. There's hiring signs up everywhere. If you drive around Butte, it's really fascinating. So obviously some of those employees did not return to those industries that were able to open this week. And, you know, there's all kinds of reasons, I'm sure, many of them that we've discussed, you know, what great resources. And so I think that the workforce will still be a challenge. It'll be really how you managed it during times of crisis. Did you keep in touch? Did you reach out to resources? Did you offer people resources? Did you also talk to people about the fact it's okay if they're scared? You know, I've heard a lot of employers think they have to be, excuse my French, you know, harden down and get back to work and do all this. I've seen employers that generally have that great need really reach out and provide support to their employees. So I'm with Tabatha. I don't really want it to go back the way it was as far as that goes. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about the way people act. I've learned a lot about who is behind us. Some of the efforts that your group has done, I think, have been amazing. I've learned more about it too. So I think right now it's just carrying on. It's, you know, encourage people within their comfort zone and business necessity as far as employers go, to approach it kindly and with loyalty, but also to talk to people about the need for them and their value in that business.
So along that line, who do you recommend that an employer, and anybody can answer this for me, but who do you recommend that an employer like reach out to make those hard choices? You know, we get a lot of phone calls about hiring and firing. We get a lot of calls about, staffing issues. We get a lot of calls about how to operate your business, but we're unable to give any kind of legal advice or anything. But
Yep.
I think that a lot of employers are faced with, like you said, separating people from their
Mhm.
employment. Things aren't working for them, or perhaps they've had to scale back due to COVID. So they realize that they had 10 full-time employees and now they can really only afford to keep 6 of those employees.
Right.
What's the panel's recommendations for, those employers that need that kind of, if you will, peer-to-peer engagement or professional advice to make sure that they don't do something legally that's going to damage their business and their reputation in the communities. I have a business in a rural community that reached out to me, and she had folks that were, worried about coming to work. And she said, I need them. And if they don't want to come, I'm going to have to hire someone else. And I was really concerned for her because in a small town, we all know how hard that is, for reputation wise to keep people on your side. So what are your guys' input on that? What are your thoughts? Tabatha, I'll pick on you first since I picked on Kathy last. Tabatha, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, those are some sounding questions that we get asked a lot. And where do you think people should turn, or employers should turn for that if they don't have a trusted advisor, or, and a lawyer? Like a lot of our small businesses, they don't retain a lawyer. So who do they go to for that kind of assistance? Kari, anybody?
Yeah, I was hoping Kari would hop right in there as the HR consultant. I mean, we certainly help and know all the ins and outs for all of our clients. We may or may not for somebody that we don't work with, because we wouldn't know the ins and outs. But and I would say to get an advisor, to join SHRM, to find those HR resources and tools from the government, from HR entities that can help you make those decisions. And I would say for anybody, document. For one, starters. So you have to, I don't care what you're going to do now or in the future, but for us, and especially because we work with 50-fold employees, clients, associates, everybody, that we have to document. If the phone rings, that is going to get documented somewhere in our system. And it comes down to later in the future, and then we will see it now in unemployment. They call us to verify, did you have work for this person on this date? Did they turn it down? Why did they turn it down? Things like that. So unemployment is going to tighten back down, and people will kind of be forced to get back to work, even if they are preferring it or getting more with the $600 more. But anyway, so that's what I would say on the HR part. And I will go back to with the employees or employers, and choosing and finding the people that are going to move forward with you and the way that you want to move forward. And that includes making those tough decisions and letting some people go, but doing it in a proper way, of course. And I would say on reputation, Julie, you alluded to that, and the fear, especially with social media, keyboard warriors, right? That you do and are out there. And I've seen more businesses, and I gave a talk on marketing efforts in this time, that you are out there doing the good things. Kathy said they're out there in the community helping, doing deliveries. We're out there, we're supporting restaurants, we're posting all kinds of things, health tips, positivity, that you market and get out there in other ways. You share the positive stories. I will certainly share about the gal that got held on hold, literally ready to start the next day, but then she started now. So sharing those stories of how we do help people, and or how that business serves people. We've seen an uptick, of course, hopefully way more positive lately, but in reviews on Facebook, Google, and I would do those reviews. I am in a business networking group, so we went back to that on peers. So if anybody's interested, just contact me or find Butte Business Network on Facebook or whatnot, things like that. But growing and asking for those reviews when you do have a positive experience. And for like Kathy and I, it can be with the client, but also with the associate or employee When you have a positive customer experience of any kind, ask for the review and give them. When you order food from that restaurant and they've taken that extra step or things like that, you give that review also. We all need it more now than ever before, but that can help prevent some of those negative things that could happen if you have had to let somebody go, or if you've had to pivot or things like that, or if you have a negative customer experience. But you have to overcome one negative with about 7 to 9 positives.
That's good. That's good advice. Kari, what are your thoughts on my hard question?
Yeah, very hard question. Repeat it one more time, just so I make sure I get it right.
Well, what I want to know is, like, for employers, making those tough decisions, how they go about that and move forward in a positive light. They've had to lay somebody off maybe, or they've had to cut their staff, or they're faced with, turmoil in their business. I mean, we deal one-on-one a lot with business owners, and I have heard some really heartbreaking stories from those business owners. And I think a lot of them are internalizing a lot of this and holding it within, and they're feeling a lot of responsibility, both socially and to their staff. And then having to look at the bottom line, right? And make tough decisions about who they keep, who they don't keep, how they manage the outward appearance of their business in a community, how they keep positive and stay focused. And I think we touched on a lot of the peer-to-peer interaction. We encourage people to work with others in the same industry and opposing industries, because I think you can learn so much. I mean, even with you ladies today, it's amazing to me how much I learned just from having a simple conversation with you, talking to you and seeing things through your eyes and your perspective changes how I view things and how I feel things. And so we've tried to encourage that, mentorship, and don't necessarily share trade secrets, because we, instantly we had a breakdown where they were like, we can't share that with you. That's our trade secret. We're like, we're not asking you to do that. We're asking you to connect on a more human level and help each other get through this. So, I just want to know what your advice would be to employers that, they don't have a lawyer, they don't have an accountant, maybe a trusted accountant. They don't know where to turn for advice on HR. I mean, there's a lot of HR issues right now. Can I fire somebody for not showing up? Can I fire them if they won't let me take their temperature? They're refusing to do what I ask them to do, even though it's not in their job description. I mean, there's so much of that going on right now. So that's,
Right.
I'm just kind of looking for you to give me your best sounding advice.
Yeah, I do think that, seeking someone who can provide a little guidance, whether, depending on the situation, whether it is an HR consultant, whether it might even be, an employment attorney, if you get to that level, hopefully you find someone to bounce some ideas off of before it gets to that point, I would hope. The other thought I was thinking when Tabatha was talking was, there are services like SCORE and, other things through like SBDC, type places where people, I don't know if you can get different types of advice there, or if you go through like a Prospera or, other just business networking areas where but it's not going to be, advice you get there, again, isn't necessarily going to be something that you're going to be legally binding or anything like that. But, everybody's going to have a new situation or different situation, like you were kind of talking about, that these individual businesses and the reputation, that's really big. I've been working with a few clients right now who are trying to communicate on social media what they are doing, the action that they are taking, how they are caring for their employees, how they're caring for their customers, how they're shifting, and what their focus is, them saying that all of their employees are staying home right now so that they're safe, or, hey, we're reopening and this is the scale that we're reopening in, and come say hi. Our employees want to see you again. They miss you, things like that. And really, again, staying positive, but encouraging people to, see that business in the light that you want them to see is important, and keeping that reputation positive. And making those tough decisions is definitely never something that is easy. I helped a client, downsized from probably 40 or 50, and now they're down to about 20. There's going to be a lot of those stories, and it's tough. And the thing that I thought was amazing is what they did is they not only sent them initially, but they are continuing to send them. They're sending them gift cards for groceries and gas. They're probably not using the gas as much, but they were able to, pull a little bit of money together and sending them gift cards so that they can, help still a little support them. Like, yes, it was a very difficult thing that they had to do, but they still care. They still really care about those employees. And that might not be everyone's situation, but it is important to realize that we're all human. And we're all going through this new experience together. And I feel like a lot of people are acting out, like when you were talking about the example of people like, I don't want you to take my temperature. I'm not going to do that because it's not in my job. To me, that's fear. Someone's afraid of kind of that unknown. Right. So maybe they need a little extra coaching. Maybe they need just a little bit of a, like, it's okay. I got you. We're going to get through this. I'm asking you to do this for these reasons, and if they're still refusing, then maybe they just need to, I guess, go home, think about it. Is this the right place for you still? Those types of situations, but it's all going to be very, very individual. That's the wonderful thing about HR. It's full of color. There's no black and white. Or maybe very little. Yeah.
It's hard, right?
Yes.
So we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap up the conversation, but I want to give each of you the chance to kind of, maybe if you will, leave us with your thoughts for the day of what you think the future is, or what you think employers or employees can do to move through this. And Sarah, I'm gonna start with Sarah first. Sarah, tell us what your thoughts are as we wrap up our training today, or what your mind is thinking about.
I think my takeaway from this is I'm just so tickled that every single one of us has said we're human, and that everything that we're doing, we're trying to learn along the way, and to show that vulnerability of ourselves. Yep. And our staff and the people who are coming in. Kari brought up a great point. What if they don't want to have something done, a temperature taken? Mm-hmm. I feel it's also fear, but it's also they feel they have no control. The situation is completely and totally out of all of our control. And maybe their only way of feeling like they have some control over something is saying, no, I don't want you to take my temperature. Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of how do you put some control back in their life, and how do you have someone feel like they have some say in their own world versus not. And that's a hard thing to come about, but I think if we all show, just as both Tabatha and Kathy and Kari have said, is we're human, and go based on that human level. Everything's changing each day, every couple of weeks. We go with it, but know where we're not willing to crisscross that line. And that line is caring and being human, and how do we manage all of this in between that?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tabatha, what are your last thoughts?
So I would say for employers and employees, as tough as this is, I think that it is an opportunity for all sides, for the community. Like, we've seen so many good things, the restaurant group on Facebook, the support, the neighborly, the friendly, the Zoom, the creativity, the innovation, right? So I feel that it's an opportunity for employers to reassess your values, your direction, new methods, building or rebuilding that culture that you want to have moving forward, and how you're going to hire and speak to that, and lead by example, and carry forward the people that are going to best do that with you. And I think it also is an opportunity for some employers to treat employees with more value, with more respect, with more I so appreciate you. My gratitude and my heart is exploding most every day. I think sometimes they think I'm a little bit kooky, but that's okay. I think it's also an opportunity to reassess business planning. We know businesses got some help. We know other businesses did not, but we also all know that we internally can do things better. So now is the opportunity to figure out other ways to cut costs, other ways to expand services. It really is that time to get innovative and creative and move forward better. And then for employees, the training, building your skills, and being appreciative of those jobs. There are everyday employers looking. We're looking right now for probably 20. We need the right skill set. We can't just put anybody in a CDL driver position, but there are some that have basic skill sets, but we need people, and we need good people. We need employees and people in the workforce to reassess why they're working, what they're working, who they're working for, and how to show up as a great employee, because they're going to find somebody that will. Somebody that wants to work there and show up and be on time and learn and grow and cross-train and take those opportunities given. So I think it is an opportunity to move forward. And my favorite quote these days is that the comeback is going to be stronger than the setback.
Good. I like that. That's good. Okay, Kathy, it's to you.
I'm so glad I didn't go first. Probably all of the above and more. I think that this is definitely an opportunity, and for some people the opportunity will be they will do something very different, much like, you know, everybody's expressed that it's giving them a little time to think, a little time to reflect, but the recovery is coming, and I totally believe it. Believe me, I've lived through these things, and we can recover. It just looks different, and generally we are better.
Awesome. Thank you. Kari?
Yeah, I'll just add to that and just say that, I mean, I'm not a native Montanan, but it's definitely where my heart and soul live. And Montanans are tough, but not only are we tough, we watch out for each other. And I really do think that, you know, if business owners, they're at least starting to reach out, that, you know, they're making a call to you guys, they have resources in their community, I would tell them and encourage them to continue to do that. Maybe they're not talking to someone who might be in direct competition with them or same industry. Maybe they're just talking to another business owner. Maybe it's just someone who's, you know, if they're on Main Street, maybe they just go next door and say, how are you handling all of these things? How are you holding up? You know, are you doing all right? Are your employees okay? You know, have you been infected? Is anybody, you know, really suffering? How can we help one another? And I mean, I think that's one of the reasons these days that I've kind of been back on social media a little bit more, and I've been watching the news a little bit more, because there are so many amazing stories of how people are truly kind of taking this crisis and saying, how does it make us stronger, and how does it bring us together? Because it can. And I think that there are some sad things, obviously, that are still happening. You know, there are definitely things that, you know, I would hope don't necessarily happen in Montana, as far as, you know, hate crimes still happening and things of that sort. But, you know, people are scared. They need security. They need to know that everything's going to be okay. And not that any of us can say that it will be okay. I just think we need to believe it. I think we need to kind of believe that it will be okay, because we've gotten through tougher things before. We'll get through this. As long as we stick together and we stay positive, we'll make it happen. We always do. So that's how I'll close.
Awesome. Well, I should ask too, I know the attendees there, were there any questions from anybody before we let our panel go? Did anybody have any final questions that they wanted to ask, or things that we maybe didn't touch on?
Can I mention just one quick thing that I did forget to talk about?
Yes, please.
There is there is a new employee poster that does need to be posted for any employer that has 500 employees or less, is that FFCRA employee rights. So it's that paid sick leave that has been discussed. I can certainly share it with you and Courtney, Julie, if that would be helpful, so employees know that to post that. And if they do have a remote team, I've been suggesting that it actually go out via email, but it is a new poster that's required.
Awesome, that would be great. Thank you so much. We would appreciate that. Courtney, what final thoughts do you have for us?
Well, definitely thank you, all you panelists, for joining us. I thought all of that was super good information, and I definitely learned a lot of information that I'll be able to pass on to my clients. So I thought it was very helpful, and all of your guys' answers and discussion was amazing. When I start thinking about COVID, I think about how strong our community is and how, this is the first time for everybody that's going through this. And it's really reassuring to see the community come together. Our community has always been like that, but even more so now to, see everyone helping each other and reaching out, I think is really important. And just knowing that they do have someone they can rely on for support, or if they need to talk to anybody. And I think that is one of the most important things, is to reach out. If you have a question, if you're unsure of something, if you just want to talk, there's so many people to reach out to. And I feel extremely lucky to be able to work with, all of you guys, to be able to provide all these resources for our clients. So I'm just feeling thankful and very informed from all of your guys' discussion.
Awesome, thank you, Courtney. I would just say that we had a panel of rock stars today, all beautiful ladies. Too bad that Mike didn't come, because he would have been our token male. But I want to say thank you, because I do think that it's really relevant information, and I think it's great to hear different perspectives. Some things that I heard from all of you during today's conversation were really strong words that I think folks need to focus in on as they move through this. So transparency, opportunity, gratitude, retention, innovation, values, mission, growth, retention, and recovery. Those are all the things that you folks mentioned as we answered all of the questions today. And I think as small business owners and employees across the state of Montana, one, we have to be really thankful, I think, for where we are. Montana is a resilient state. We have great resources, great partners, great people on the ground that want to help. And I think that that's really truthfully the biggest value of Montana. There are local resources, and these ladies here are some of those resources that can help you if you're struggling in your business. If you have HR questions, or you need help, or you need help with your employees, reach out to them. Of course, us at Headwaters with the Small Business Development Center, we also provide technical assistance and can help make those connections to, the unemployment office. We can help connect you to any of these lovely ladies here on our panel today. And I think that the important thing that I want people to take away from this is, even though things are extremely new and changing all the time, I think some things that I learned from today's training is to just stay positive, to make sure you're taking care of your mental health and the mental health of your employees. I know that that's extremely important. I think to do a check-in is really good advice. Check in with your staff, check in with your employees, make sure that they're getting what they need. Check in with your clients and your customers to make sure that they're getting what they need. I think that's equally as important. And then as the owner of the business, check in on yourself. Whether you have a trusted peer that you can kind of bounce ideas or things that are on your mind off of, if you just need to talk to somebody, there's always help for you. And I want to stress that as an employer, I think that that's really critical to reach out if you need something, if you need help. So today's panel was excellent. I think there was a lot of good information shared, a lot of good resources. We will make sure to post the poster. We'll put it on our website that Kari's going to share with us, and then we'll send it out via email to all of you so that you have it. And you can go back and rewatch this, because I think we're going to post it on Facebook and on YouTube for folks to watch it that couldn't sit through the entire training. But please, and we'll put your contact information, if you ladies are okay with that, we'll add your contact information to the emails that go out. I want to say thank you so much for joining me this morning, bright and early at 8:30. And we really appreciate you being part of this training. So thank you so much. Happy Tuesday, Cinco de Mayo Day, right?
Cinco de Mayo. Thank you so much. This was really fantastic.
Thank you,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank
We'll
you
be
all.
in touch. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
You